We begin our show this morning with two major foreign policy challenges for President Biden: the war in Ukraine and North Korea's worrying new missile tests.
Yeah, Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, is still on edge one day after Russia carried out a series of strikes on that city and many others in response to Saturday's Crimea bridge explosion. Officials say 19 people died across Ukraine and more than 100 were left injured. This morning, people in Kyiv took shelter again after air raid sirens rang out through the city. Over in Zaporizhia, explosions were heard throughout the night. One person was killed, according to the regional governor, after missiles hit public buildings. President Biden condemned yesterday's attack, quote, in a phone call with President Zelensky. Biden vowed to continue supporting Ukraine by providing it with advanced air defense systems. NBC News correspondent Cal Perry has the very latest from Kyiv.
Good morning, guys. This is a city that is weary, a city that is tired, that once again had air raid sirens throughout a night and is surveying the damage. We're here at a playground to show you the impact crater that one of these rockets left. You can see how destructive each of these individual strikes were, and there were dozens of strikes throughout the day. The death toll currently across the country, more than 19 people dead, more than 100 wounded. And you can see so many of these targets were just civilians' targets, a children's playground. This playground is a miracle that nobody was killed, because this park was bustling at 8:15 in the morning rush hour, and the attacks, as I said, are not over. Officials are stressing that they are worried Russia could carry out another wave of strikes. We've already seen that this morning in the city of Zaporizhia. A dozen rockets landing in one wave, killing one person, but again hitting infrastructure targets, which is what we're seeing in the western part of the country as well, in the city of Lviv, taking a second round of strikes this morning. We're told the power is still out in that city. Savannah, Gotti.
Cal, stay safe out there. Thanks so much for that.
And now to the latest from North Korea, which is making provocative new comments, saying its recent string of tests were designed to simulate a nuclear strike meant to wipe out South Korean and American targets. We have full team coverage of this latest escalation with NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley in Seoul, South Korea, and NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. Good morning to the both of you. Matt, I will start with you. So North Korea has conducted 7 missile tests now in recent weeks, including simulated use of its tactical battlefield nuclear weapons. What do we know about those weapons, and why is this happening right now?
Yeah, Savannah, it's an interesting question. It's not just those 7 tests in just the last 2 weeks. That's a really high tempo of testing. It's actually been more than 40 since the beginning of the year, which is unprecedented. We haven't seen that ever. So this year has seen a really big ramp up in the testing of all of the missile systems that North Korea has available. And, you know, a lot of these are showing off new technology. You know, hearing from people who watch North Korea, they say there's no reason necessarily to not believe what the North Koreans' explanation is, which is that they have the tech and they're trying to test to see if it works. But at the same time, they're also trying to demonstrate to the world that they have this capability, because up until now, we know that the North Koreans had nuclear capabilities. They tested those decades ago, so they have that. They also have ballistic missile capability. In certain places, they have long-range ballistic missile capability. But what they haven't been able to show is that they can marry the two, that they can deliver a nuclear payload on a ballistic missile, and that it would be effective in reaching places like Seoul, where I am now, or U.S. military assets, military bases in this city or elsewhere on the peninsula, and places like Guam, even the continental United States. So this is a demonstration to show that not only are they able to detonate a nuclear weapon, but that they're able to reach out and use that nuclear weapon in combat. Now, they're also ramping up this technology and doing all of these tests in such a rapid pace because the pace of U.S. and North and South Korean and Japanese military exercises have also been increasing this year. Now, a lot of that has to do with the fact that President Donald Trump is no longer in office, and we're getting back to a footing under Joe Biden where there is more cooperation between the United States and allies here in Northeast Asia. So in many ways, it is the United States and its allies here in this part of the world that is motivating the North Korean response. Savannah?
So, Matt, what is South Korea saying about this? I mean, just earlier this year, a new conservative government was inaugurated in Seoul. How are they responding?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Savannah. And for better or for worse, you know, the actual government that's in office in South Korea here doesn't necessarily have the same amount of traction that the government in Washington does. So whether there's a conservative government or a liberal government here in Seoul, it really is all about who is in power in Washington, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Joe Biden. And the government here, they're responding the way other successive governments in the past have responded. They're condemning these tests and saying that nuclear weapons are not necessary and should not be used. And that is the kind of language that you would hear from any government. But Kim Jong-un has made it clear time and time again that he doesn't even necessarily want to speak to the government here in Seoul. He wants to speak to whoever's in power in Washington. He considers Seoul to be entirely beholden to the government in the United States. And whether he's wrong or whether he's right, that means that it is Washington that sets the tone and the tempo of the diplomacy that happens here on the Korean Peninsula.
Mike,
Savannah?
that's a perfect way to bring you in here. So what is the White House's response here?
Well, to Matt's point, while the North Koreans may want to deal solely with the United States response has always been, and is in this case, to emphasize the unanimity of our alliances in the region. The United States ramping up its contacts, President speaking just in the last week, and the Vice President as well, with the Prime Minister of Japan and the President of South Korea. The White House has always emphasized that all these conversations are happening in tandem, in triad, you could say, with these three nations. But there's another point worth considering here, and this is as the White House is monitoring this very closely, a meeting that the president is likely going to have in the next month. The president, in the past, we've seen that China is often a useful interlocutor here in trying to manage these tensions between the United States and its allies in the region, as well as North Korea. Now, President Biden is expected to meet in person for the first time next month with China's President Xi Jinping during a summit in Indonesia. That conversation obviously is going to cover a range of subjects, but the increased tensions in North Korea are likely to be rising to the top of the list.
Absolutely. Mike, also, though, North Korea, of course, isn't our only international concern right now. Ukrainian President Zelensky actually tweeted that he spoke with President Biden yesterday following these renewed Russian attacks we've seen in Ukraine and on the capital city of Kyiv. Do we know what was said during that call and what the White House is saying about this new line of attack from Russia?
Yeah, this is actually the second conversation between these two leaders in about a week, an indication of the extreme concern within the White House. You and I talked last week about the president's closed-door comments at the fundraiser about this as well. The White House saying that the president continued to pledge to continue providing Ukraine with support it needs to defend itself, including advanced air systems, and also to provide security, economic, and humanitarian assistance. In just about an hour, Savannah, President Biden will be taking part in a emergency meeting of the G7 leaders to talk about the urgent response here. And the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is also flying to Brussels for a meeting with G7 defense ministers, where this is going to be at the top of the agenda. Of course, the rising concern here, as there is concern that, well, for the discussions about President Putin looking for an off-ramp, he's not interested in one.
Absolutely. Concerns, as you mentioned, that he expressed of a nuclear Armageddon. And look at the conversation we're having this morning. Mike Memoli and Matt Bradley, thank you both so much for your reporting.
Now to Washington and the latest on the search of Mar-a-Lago. The Justice Department is set to respond by today to former President Trump's request to vacate a ruling from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Trump filed the emergency motion to the Supreme Court last week, just hours after the appeals court allowed the DOJ to resume its review of the documents seized in the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago. Let's bring in NBC News analyst and former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner. Glenn, good morning. First, let's go back a little bit here. What's Trump's legal team arguing, and why do they want to reverse the appeals court ruling?
You know, Trump's legal team has been trying to argue that a former president should enjoy some sort of special status in the law. So he should be entitled to, for example, a special master, an independent third party to review everything that the FBI seized from him pursuant to a lawfully issued, a judicially issued search warrant. And, you know, most people, I think, are of the mind that, well, the law should treat everybody the same, should treat everybody equally. So why should a former president get this special treatment, have an independent third party review everything? But, you know, I would hasten to add that the law actually doesn't treat everybody the same. When federal prosecutors, when the FBI searches an attorney's office, well, that attorney will typically get a special master appointed to review all the materials that have been seized for potential attorney-client privilege. I could see the appellate courts wrestling with this unprecedented set of facts the search of a former president's home and say, you know what, we're going to put a former president in the category of an attorney. We're going to say we're going to build some extra safeguards into the system and let this special master review run its course. So, you know, we're all closely watching what the 11th Circuit will do. And then, of course, the outlier is Donald Trump's defense team has already filed an emergency appeal with Justice Clarence Thomas, who has supervisory responsibility over the 11th Circuit. So there are a lot of moving legal pieces in this one.
Now, Glenn, when it comes to prosecutors, what options are available to the DOJ when responding to Trump's request? What are you expecting to see from the federal prosecutors?
Oh, I expect they're going to hold the line. They're going to say, listen, we acquired this evidence lawfully pursuant to a judicially issued search warrant. And they're probably going to argue that the president is but a mere mortal and the DOJ should be allowed to go about its business in a timely manner of conducting a criminal investigation of documents that, let's call it what it was, were stolen by the president from the executive branch, from the government, and were seized and returned to the government. And now DOJ needs to do a prompt and thorough investigation to see where criminal liability might lie.
And what's next for the DOJ investigation once this legal battle is passed?
Well, I have to believe they are dug into these documents. They're probably subpoenaing grand jury witnesses to testify about the documents, whether they were shared, whether they were compromised, whether they were leveraged. And, you know, Donald Trump just sort of infamously said at one of his rallies, they're my documents and I want them back. And, you know, that is not only pretty telling, it is also potentially an admission that could be used in a future prosecution if one is brought against Donald Trump.
Glenn Kirshner, thanks so much. Now to your morning news now. Weather, it looks like a pretty big cold front is headed our way. We've got meteorologist Michelle Grossman.
Yeah,
she's in the studio, right?
I know. She's right here in the studio. We got some showers in the middle of the country, right? What's happening?
We have some showers, some storms. By the way, I feel like I'm like a family reunion. You guys look so similar. Like,
I know.
Right?
We're debating on who's going to lose the glasses because there are one set of glasses too many on this desk.
I love it.
We'll both not know what's going on.
You're both adorable. All right. Yeah, let's talk about the storms because we are looking. Well, let's start with freeze warnings because it is so cold in so many spots. We're looking at frost advisories, freeze warnings. We're starting out with temperatures in the 30s in a lot of spots. So upstate New York into New Hampshire, Vermont, also Maine, looking at that chilly start. We're looking at temperatures 30s, 40s, 51 degrees right now in New York City. It's going to warm this afternoon once that sun really gets going. But as we look towards the west in the plains, we are so above normal for this time of year, 15 to 20 degrees above normal. It's this big area of high pressure. It's funneling in this warm air, also some humidity. So it's hot, it's humid in some spots, and it feels like August in a lot of spots. So temperatures for the highs today, 15 to 25 degrees above what is average for this time of year. That is in the red, and this is what's ahead of the cold front. Once that cold front moves through, it's going to knock down the temperatures, and we're going to see a big difference over the next several days. But again, it's feeling like August in some spots in mid-October. What does that look like? It looks like 85 degrees in Omaha today, 19 degrees above normal for this time of year. Minneapolis, 81, Wichita, 84. We're warm also in Green Bay, just 75. That's 14 degrees above normal for this time of year. Then this warmth is going to move off to the east. So there's that cold front back here. Here's the warm air. We're looking at 90s in Dallas, also in Houston tomorrow, 91 in Dallas. That's 12 degrees above normal for this time of year, 69 in Buffalo, 71 in Boston. Then we'll keep it warm on Thursday in portions of the mid-Atlantic. We're looking at temperatures right around 71 on Thursday. We drop it down because that cold front's going to move through the Northeast. That's going to bring the chance for showers and storms. So 66 on Friday, 64 on Saturday. Feeling nice and crisp. It was a great weekend last weekend. We're going to do another one once again this weekend. We have those mild highs. We have the chance for strong to severe storms. I'll get in that in just a second. Much cooler temperatures in the Pacific Northwest. We were warm yesterday. There's that cold front. It's a strong one. It's going to bring the chance for strong wind gusts. It could be damaging. Some lightning, also some hail. We could see some rain and snow mixing into the Rockies, also the high plains. Tomorrow, there's that cold front. You can see the storms kind of blossoming along that cold front from Texas all the way to Michigan. So again, the threat would be damaging winds, some heavy rain, some lightning. And then the Northeast, you're going to have a wet day. It's going to be windy, too, kind of a damp day on Thursday, so plan some indoor activities. We could see a lot of rain, too, generally 2 to 4 inches, the most falling in portions of New England. Mentioning the severe threat today, it's anywhere from Oklahoma into portions of the Great Lakes, so Minneapolis, Des Moines, Kansas City, into Wichita. We're looking at winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Could see some hail, low chance for a tornado, but it is not zero. And then tomorrow, we're looking at that area expanding. So now we're talking the Southern Plains, the Tennessee Valley, into the Ohio Valley. Once again, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Hail, could see some really heavy rain as well. Generally 2 to 4 inches. Notice those brighter colors. That's where we're expecting the heaviest rain. So portions of Pennsylvania into New York. I love that you're so into this. Also New England. You're really leaning into this. So you need the umbrella on Thursday. I love it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.